Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Being Human Now show. I'm your host, Jennifer Locksmith, and today we have Karen back with us.
How
Karen
are
and
you?
Lucyk Macdonald. I'm good. How are you, Karen?
Pretty excited. Just enjoying the day. There's so much light coming in. I'm just waiting to jump outside.
It's
I get to
awesome.
spend this time with you, so it's great in your audience. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here because we're going to talk about some different stuff today because you have quite the interesting life. Karen leads a very exciting and interesting life, to say the least. Professionally, she is a healer known as a quantum medicine therapist. On her off time, things can get interesting, being that she has been visiting the area many call Canada's Area 51. Sasquatch, UFO firefights, and strange experiments on the population are a daily occurrence. Tonight, she's going to be sharing her experiences and insider knowledge with us, as well as her personal insights. Thank you so much for being here again.
Well,
So,
thanks for having
yeah. So you have been, hanging around. You've spent some time at what's known as Canada's Area 51. The first question a lot of people are going to be wondering is, where is this area? And I know you said you can show it to us so people can have an idea of where it is.
Sure, absolutely. So a lot of people, when we start talking about original maps, custom usages and laws, we don't use the terms Canada and the States. We just don't. I mean, you can look at
Yeah.
tribal maps and I can bring one up, in a few minutes here. But when we actually take a look at where are we, who are we, where do we come from, you should actually know the territories that you belong to.
Yeah.
So most people will just say, kind of think, oh, wow, this is Canada, States, and, as we think BC and everywhere else. And where are you located right now,
I'm in
roughly?
Maryland.
Okay, so up in here, we look up in the, different things up in here in Maryland. What happens is that we always assume, since people came in and they think these countries, that there weren't Tartarian like millions of people here to start with. And it's documented there was over 100 million people here, right? So
Yeah.
that's a lot of people to have, taken out, that have been
Yeah.
removed. And that's 100 million that were killed. So when we got the books here and we think of the Dakota, a lot of what was actually called the Dakota is what you would call similar to Pleiadians, Dakota. And so these were actually different territories, or what they used to call even the Bear Clan. So if you actually look trajectory wise, what you call Tartarian, you think Russia. Well, when you know how small it is, like you could throw a baseball basically between us, people think Russia and Alaska, which technically was only under, it was leased to them. I don't know if you know that. And
No.
the lease was up probably about 15 months ago. So actually, even your Alaska technically was on loan,
Oh my
leased
goodness.
out from Russia. So we don't look at that. So when you look at the original Tartarian maps, you're looking at basically circumpolar, right? And if you look at actually all the different usually pyramids, you're going to see they're actually on a circle all the way through. So when you start looking at Egypt and everything else, you'll start seeing that, they're almost like on a circumpolar, but similar to what you think of the latitude. But in here, as most people know, so that's why everyone's laughing about, is it going to be Area 51 or what? Or is it going to be the 51st state? We could all laugh about that right now.
Yeah.
51st state, Area 51. Maybe there's something about this, right?
Yeah.
You see
Yeah.
how close things are broke away, but you can see why they're strategically wanted here. But in here, as we get in a little closer, I'm presently in, and I arrived in what's called Sweatmac territory, which is way up in here. And people think near to Kamloops or whatever. But when you get into these different areas, when you had them like form provinces or states, that this was under the Iroquois Confederacy, by the way. And so it wasn't even just upper lower Canada. You had your 13 colonies. This all belonged territorially, and it still does because no one ever signed it off. There was no war, and nor did someone surrender any of this land. So people just come in and assume they have, rights to it, and they actually don't.
Yeah.
So as long as you were, treaty or tribe, and white tribes, black tribes, Asian tribes, whatever, tribes have their six peace treaties. So we could go any in the world. We're welcome everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about this. But in here, what you would think of territorially, that the Sinaitic territory is getting actually close into here, what you call just above Spokane, Washington. And in this area is called the Sinaitic territory. So as you guys think, Dakota, and then we'd get in the Cree and the Hiawatha here, and then Anishinaabe, Sassuni, Blackfoot down in here. Okay, so this is important that people recognize that these are the original borders. These are the original territories, and they were whole linguistic, so it's based on language. So it's probably a wise thing to know a few things in your language here. If you're over there in Maryland, a lot of that was, what you call the Micmac territory, Seneca, Tuscarora, things like that. So you should actually be in touch with some of the local tribes that are there, right? Because
Yeah.
that makes a determination. If someone wants to come in here and start saying to me, "Oh my gosh, you know, um, you're under such and such jurisdiction, you got to pay taxes, you got to do this, you got to do that," they don't apply to you. They don't actually apply to anyone.
Yeah.
And so in here, this is what's really important here. So I arrived in what you call Kamloops, or the Secwepemc territory. People think is British Columbia. So the areas we're talking about, and the other thing I'm going to bring up, really, really important, because when you're talking about sacred stuff and really weird stuff, is in what you call the Nahiawak Cree area. There's a place called Saskatoon, and that's where I basically grew up my entire life before I went on here. And the reason why I want to bring it to your attention here is that when you get into Saskatoon, just north of here is something called Wanaskewin. And Wanaskewin, up in the northern part of Saskatoon on the South Saskatchewan River here, is the second largest medicine wheel on the whole continent.
Oh,
And so I
wow.
was also a protector of that site. So I wanted to start here before we go into some of that.
Absolutely.
So
Because you're a
up to
clan
this,
mother. People should
mhm,
know you're also a clan mother, which is a big deal.
yeah,
Um,
the white one. But
yes.
into here, as we get just up into this river's edge here, there's a huge, huge medicine wheel. And it's a sacred site. There we are. We're coming into it right now. And so these are cosmic dates, cosmic calendars, and they've been taken over by some of the local tribes and stuff like that. And then what happens is that they're not the hereditaries. So things actually get co-opted and actually used for nefarious purposes. So don't assume just because you go to something you think is a tribal site, you'll see that they actually have put shards in here. And if you look at it, it's starting to look like the Eye of Horus and all sorts of things when you get here. And instead of having a teepee, which you really can't see, they split it into shards. So it's like breaking the piece,
Oh,
breaking
no.
the wheel. So once you get in here, right, it's not always what people think. And so once you're out here and you get into these fields, and you can see how they've co-opted it. They've tried to say, well, and they found bones and remains and stuff here. And they go, oh, well, we haven't found enough. So actually what's terrible here is that, the burial sites, they always they're similar to Avebury or all these sort of different places, and up into Stonehenge where all the crop circles are. It would actually be further up here. And I actually was there. So I could actually see the, walk of enlightenment and stuff like that you would see in these sites. But of course, they don't want people to know that. So they're assuming that this is going back to the natives, but it's not natives. It's going back to the corporations, which is like going back to the United Nations or anything else.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that to people's attention because this is a huge site. These are midpoints. And it's hard to tell, but I'll tell you, I've been there and I was doing some things. And within about 15 minutes, I had black helicopters over my head. I've also seen TR3s and TR4s. And there's actually on Mr. MB333 on radar was caught one of the hugest things, basically from all the way from Edmonton, probably half of it, as you think, from Edmonton into the other border. So almost like that whole page was actually filled for several minutes with, they think, like a UFO. They caught something on radar, an entire blip just about covered 2 provinces,
Oh,
which is
my
like about
gosh.
a quarter of your state. So Edmonton, by the way, I'm just going through some fun stuff here.
Yeah.
Edmonton had a 4.2 quake. There's an army base there. And Calgary is known to have a 27 floor facility underground as well, like a base.
Uh-huh.
And I have
Wow.
been underground, there are parts of the city and even Saskatoon you can go to, that still have Tartarian markings, and you can see where there's actually used to be underground walkways. So I've been in it. Our entire University of Saskatchewan campus has got underground walkways. So
Oh,
it
my
wasn't rocket
goodness.
science to think that they just kept going through the whole city, right? And I've
Yeah.
actually talked to people, I've met with people myself that have been underground and been
Hmm.
part of these rituals. So
Wow.
they've come to me to speak with a lot of that. So these are very, very important things. And you can just see how through colonization, you can see how they've been destroying the lands. You can see how lush the lands were at one point. You can see where things like what you're seeing, like AI data centers. They're destroying the entire
Oh my God, they're
waterways, and they're
horrible.
yeah, this looks about as bad as Africa now. And that's
Yeah.
not the way it used to do because they've been taking these dams, most of them since again the 50s. And again, we're talking about stuff that goes back sometimes thousands of years. But in here, a lot of that, this is what we're trying to set up. So for those people, this is very important here. And so a lot of times too, and like I said, these AI data centers, I've been up at the ones way up in here in by Grand Prairie and up by Dawson Creek and stuff, these areas. And they were actually already basically, they were prepped. They had people in them like years ago. This
Oh
is not
God.
like they're going to start them. Like Sabrina Wallace says, they're already deployed. They're already operational. You're just seeing stuff on the surface maybe move.
Yeah.
But as we get into, as you call Sasquatch land, that's what we always
Yeah.
laugh about Saskatchewan, right? We call it Sasquatch land.
Yeah, we guys have all kinds of stuff happening there. You've got UFO firefights, which are apparently, we'll get into
Yep.
that, but it's like nothing, it's not a big deal for you guys, for people there.
No, no.
But
Yeah, north when you get into Waskasiu and these national parks up here,
mhm,
these are a lot of the areas I spent with some of the Cree. I went to go visit the red tribes because I'm white tribe, right?
uh-huh.
So I'd go see if they had any clan mothers left, and I never really found any, but that's okay. But been on a lot of bands and reserves, and that's where I actually saw a lot of UFOs up in this area, Canwood, Spiritwood. This is a huge thing with Muskeg Lake and getting into Atakakook, which is the Star Nation. So when I actually spent time up into these tribal areas here,
Hmm.
it's quite phenomenal. I mean, they all talk about it. They've seen big people, little people, Sasquatch. One of the Cree elders told me that he was barbecuing a muskrat, and like Sasquatch came up. He was 8 foot, took it off the barbecue, ate it, and put his barbecue stuff back. So that's probably the funniest story I kind of know of hanging out with Sasquatch people.
Yeah.
But in here, a lot of stuff is there. I've been taken to sacred sites that would have been like old pyramids. They are
Yeah.
pyramids, they're just covered up. And what has happened, and again, on the bands and the reserves, I really don't know anything because they've been co-opted and residentially schooled like most people who hasn't been. And
Yeah.
I think it's really important, like even in here, my Kreider was actually after my grandfather, Theodore. And so Kreider was actually where my great great grandparents came and settled.
Oh my
And so this is
goodness.
where the spring waters are. And there's known to be a lot of ET things. And very close here past Redberry Lake, a little place called Hafford is called the Crooked Trees up in here.
Uh-huh.
And all the trees start going on one side of the road, all the trees go this way, and on the other side, they all go into the ground. It's almost like this, like surreal kind of, haunted house kind of a thing,
Oh
right?
my gosh,
They,
yeah.
yeah. And so the electrical magnetics in here, what will happen is that they change. And because I've been told by people in the forces, we've got a whole bunch of different, like Maters, Orion, Gray, not, benevolent ET things in here. So, and this is where
So are
people
they
need to know.
underground, you mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
okay.
Yeah. And
So
so
they're
in here,
here, they're underground, a bunch of different races.
oh,
Okay.
absolutely. I've
Okay.
been told that many times.
Okay.
And like even in Kreider here, when I, stayed out in this area for a while, a couple of years ago, right? There's actually plaques in the old bells. There's actually old bells out there. And there's plaques actually to my relatives,
Oh
like
my
to my
goodness.
grandparents. Yeah,
So is this,
yeah. This
and
is
those are
important.
Tartarian, right? The bells are Tartarian. Is that where they're storing some of these ancient bells
Yeah, some
or?
have gotten, but a lot of them came over in the early 1900s or,
Okay.
this area. Like I actually went to the University of Saskatchewan and I was underground into the museums and stuff like that and getting the passenger list. And, I've gone back and I've done my genealogy like really far back, right? Tribe of Ephraim, tribe of this and that. But again, a lot of people are just not even aware of what's in their own area. And, one of the most important things, I'll just bring it in here, is a little place in here called Manitou Beach. And Manitou means creator.
Oh
So
wow.
Manitou Makwa is the word for it. We don't use the word God, and they would use, even if you anglicized it, we would use the word creator or great spirit. We would never use the word God because
Yeah.
it's, even in the Illuminati, is it, the governor domain? Is it, the generator, the, destruction? Is it, and it actually literally translated in original language to let evil or chaos keep its course. That's why they had, it's like the Illuminati council, right? Like we just
Yeah.
wouldn't use something like that.
I say
But this
creator too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and we create children, we don't got them. So anyways,
Yes, I love
you
that.
even you just even know that. But in here, I just wanted to bring, to people's point. This is where incredible healing happened. This is one of the hugest sacred sites because they're all under potash. And wherever you get potash mines, you usually know that there's underground basis. And so
Okay.
remember, there's no, underneath Winnipeg, it's got really the sarcastic gargoyles and mud flood cities, but all these have got huge corridors underneath as well, once you know the mapping system.
How
And
old do
so,
you think these bases are, Karen? Have they been here? I mean, do you know
oh, some
how?
of them
Yeah.
pre
Oh,
pre floods, you've got some here, 20, 30,000 years old, 5, 6,000 years,
these underground bases.
Yeah, the
Wow.
Monarchy Corporation through ACIO is, you can see quite clearly. And when we did a lot of stuff at, Project Incension, they go back thousands of years. You've got races that have been here for millions of years that have been here since they terraformed the planet. So define how old the planet is. I mean, they sit at bases and you won't find anything. It's a great place to get lost up in here. And this is why this is known for child trafficking too,
Oh God,
right? So
yeah.
I've known and I've been told where, children have been trafficked from the bottom of the states and stuff like that and brought up into these islands out here because who's going to find you up here in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
You got to remember your population. We've got less than 30 million, and I'd even question that number on the whole entire continent. And the maps are always deceiving. We're way bigger than you guys. Like it's like Russia, whatever. You guys are actually quite small, but they deliberately make that map in your mind that you almost think that you're bigger, and you're actually not landwise. So
yeah.
it's actually quite wild when you kind of get into it. But, we always laughed here, is someone could be the 11th province or 51st state. So, we said Saskatchewan could be getting wider, like Saskatchewan as opposed to Alberta. But Alberta was known in all these areas to have, as you talked about Tartarian, the Siberian Strait, Siber Russian. So they were just going back and forth. They didn't have borders. They didn't need borders. They had territorial areas with their clan mothers that, the chiefs and the chieftains and the male council, like the warriors protector headsmen would, protect the areas, right? That's what they were. Just like Scotlanders, you think with, what we
Yeah.
have, dances with wolves and stuff. And over there, the Highlander and, Mel Gibson and stuff with their little painted faces. They had Tartarians and they had clan mothers for each one of their clans, right?
Yeah.
And clans means children of the creator. By the way, literally that's the translation.
Hmm.
Gens or genocide would be the Roman gens, right?
Okay.
And so that's
Okay.
where you get like romancing and genocide and genealogy. It's really the Romanized or RH negative version, right? So,
Okay.
like I said, you've got like almost two things running simultaneously here.
Yeah.
So, right now, when I've been visiting a lot lately, I have been seeming to concentrate, as you see, north of Spokane in here. And that's why a lot of us are getting very, very into our spots for where we need for the pole shift, the great migration, the ascension, the event, call it whatever you want. But
Yeah.
you can see out here in the ocean, right? This is where you guys have been having thousands and thousands of quakes lately. We've had a lot of here along the fault line, but once you get in here, right in these areas here is where just out here is you've got Crescent City, and in there what you've got is massive volcanoes that are already going. So not only can you see the fault lines, you can actually see out here what would be where in nature do you have straight lines in the
Yeah.
ocean. Okay, so then you usually know there's bases or transit systems there. Again, you have ocean basis, which is a sub underground, right?
Okay.
Subterranean underground as opposed to a deep underground. So there's ocean basis and there's land basis.
I didn't even
In
think about
here,
the ocean ones. Oh my gosh.
oh,
Yeah.
there's more ocean than you would have actually on the land. You've got like even documented
Yeah.
140 some just in the States.
Do you think these earthquakes are organic, Karen, or do you think they're being caused by underground? Do you think something else is going on? The
You have
quakes
a
in
little bit of
California.
both, but
Okay.
majority of this stuff is bases. Like I said, the
Okay.
Calgary one that we know of in here and Edmonton, but Edmonton was just 4.2. We've had a lot here. A lot of people aren't aware of threes and fours out in the lower part below Kelowna.
Yeah.
And this
What
is kind
is
of
it?
the area
Like, what's
I'm
called? What is it? What are they
concentrating in here.
doing?
They're closed in the bases. So I actually have where we have bunker bases and they call them Diefenbaker bunkers or Diefen bunkers because during post World War II and in that area and right around the Queen Elizabeth time, so mostly in the 40s and 50s, is that they were really developing these. Like, even during, as you think, World War II and in Germany and stuff like that, they built like close to 400 bases and bunkers. So
Hmm.
here, Canada's got roughly about 2,000. So each area, as you think, just territorially, province-wise, would probably have about 200. So there's lots of them. So right now, and I just brought this up, we literally, the guys are sending me stuff. I have people in every one of these major cities in between. So I
Yeah.
get reports all the time. So I spent a lot of time in the Okanagan, and of course, up in here, it's an amazing thing. And I always laugh. That's why I never forget where I arrived, right? Kieran Ann Macdonald is Kamloops. Her mom
Yeah.
delivered me, right?
Oh
And there's a
yeah.
lot of stuff. That's the famous area where allegedly Queen Elizabeth came on her royal hunting party and the children disappeared. So lots
Oh,
of children are said to have been, killed,
yeah.
tribalsided, for trafficking, organs, MK Ultra, all sorts of stuff here. And again, to take out a lot of some of these different red tribes that are out here, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
these tribes, when you look at their genetics, they're really the lost tribes of Israel. So you can go into a lot of them. People assume they're all Native American. They're actually usually not.
Oh
They
wow.
come from the ISIS run L lines. And so in this area here where I am in Shwetmak territory, and when I was taken at something called Protecting the Sacred at Lillooet, which is way up in here, I went and met with a lot of the different tribes up in here and spent a couple of weeks out here.
Hmm.
And what was said is that basically they've got places called the center of the universe. And they also, they were praying. This is the first time they were bringing an international intertribal. So it meant all colors. So there was black tribe clan mothers and white tribe clan mothers and all of us here. And allegedly, basically, the queen didn't kill the children outright in Kamloops here. That it was actually out way past out in here, past Savona, out in something called Dead Man's Lake, was where I was taken to. So again, a lot of these get combobulated, and there's a lot of upset right now because the government, the Canadian government, is wanting to give these cities back to supposedly First Nations, which they're not. They're giving it to bands and reserves and other corporations. So they're basically just feeding it into their other pocket because those are basically co-ops, and they're basically what we call captured agencies. So they're basically a prisoner of war camp. So do not mistake that a band and reserve is an original hereditary First Nation or Star Nation, because you can have Pleiadian nations, and a lot of the Pleiadians, like I said, look very much like, as you think, Native Americans. So every word is very, very specific. I'm a savage sovereign, which means you are running with, and to be a sovereign means you're under the jurisdiction, under the protection of the reigning clan mother or the queen.
Yeah.
So in there, we have to be very, very careful with that. So in here, allegedly, like, they said there was 200 some 215 children buried there, but there's no evidence of bodies. And it's not that we don't have children that were taken, trafficked, adrenochrome, taken as what they used to call the long steak or the long pig, by the way. To have a pig roast
Oh yeah.
was actually to take the children. And they've
They
been
call them the
trafficked.
long pigs, and they would
That's
sell them at markets, right? This was no secret
it,
a
they
while
still
ago.
do.
Oh
Yeah.
my God,
So in
Karen.
here, these are, some of the areas. So, when I was in West Kelowna, there's a very famous area down here as you get down into the, and again, you see the gold, the silver, the copper mines, all sorts of stuff in here. So a lot of these areas, like if something is to split in a pole shift, anything sort of, what we would say west of this Okanagan area where you see Kelowna and down,
Yeah.
um, in here would be gone, basically.
Yeah. Well, that's one
So
question. Sorry, one question I have, because I was going to ask you this later. May as well do it now. So, I mean, there is a pole shift coming or changing events. I know that Rich and Alan Miller's talked about it too. He was on your show,
yeah.
on your channel. Do you have advice for people navigating what's coming or how they can best prepare? I don't know if, like, I know there have been future Navy maps. I don't know if they're legit of certain areas underwater and not. What
Yeah.
do you have to say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can go to actually Zeta Talks. And one of the things I want to say is one of the safer places when I was taken initially, and here, we'll look at here. So when you're looking at kind of close here, I want you to see where hope is. And I'll come right back to your question.
Hmm.
It's that far away. Even these weren't safe enough, like where you see from the ocean, where people think Vancouver or Seattle and stuff like that, in Portland. Because this is one of the stargates. This is where actually the area I was taken, actually.
Oh yeah, you have to tell us about that. Sorry, but we'll
This
get
is the yeah, this is the area that I was taken to, so that I can talk to,
okay.
and I was brought in. And so these areas, a lot of people assume that we're in the mountains, we're safe, but you don't realize the formulation and the elevation is totally different. So as I go into the evolution here, and the as you evolve, but also the how far up you are here. If I only look at 306 meters, where I've got my cursor right now, or 213 meters, basically you're only talking under 1,000 feet. And if you're in a flood, they want you up at least close to 4,000 feet and above.
Yeah.
So don't assume because we're in the mountains that if a flood was to happen again, another Noah's Ark, let's reset the planet, these would not be safe areas.
Yeah,
So
that's
you got to
wild.
know what the elevation is, right?
Yeah, and land's
So
gonna
as
come
we're
up too,
sitting,
right? Lands
yeah,
lands are gonna go under the water and come up out of the water, correct? I mean,
yeah,
this is yeah.
yeah. So like, in here, like I said, I was way up, out here way past Vernon and stuff. And I traveled all the way down into this Hope area. And I mean, all I remember is going, through sort of a town or blah, 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 right? And so you go in this way and out the other way. And what was ironic is I was taken here in 2006 after I was standing in the courts protecting my children and getting my arms broken by sheriffs.
Oh
But
God.
um, on here, one of the things that's really, really important is that's where actually they have gotten the footprints and the molds of the Sasquatch or the Yeti or the Bigfoots. And so I know people
Yes.
that have gotten that, also gotten the furs, heard them, and actually
Yes.
has had ET and interdimensional um, basically interactions with them, because there's a lot of gold here. And this is where these ETs and aliens are mining gold, silver, I mean, copper in here. What are your top metals? Are all basically up in here.
And what do they use
So a
them
lot.
for? Is it true there's a race that eats gold or mana, they call it?
Well, I mean, you got people that are having monatomic gold and trying to sell you like, monatomic gold like you're a man or shoebread, right, in the scriptures. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it's used for the different, ships and, as you think, spaceships and stuff, right? They can line stuff with gold, silver, different things for their purposes on and off the planet is taken.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's really important is it was back about 4 years ago. This is where Hope, and actually up in here, Lytton, was also a thing called like what you had in Maui and stuff. So what
Hmm.
you had in Maui is you flattened all these areas. And so these are the areas here that basically the towns were leveled, just like Maui and Paradise and Malibu. There was nothing left of these places. And so the reason why is they're going, oh, what's going on in here is because this is a lot of where this area was. And I happen to have had a client that was just in the back end here of Hope. Of course, it would happen almost like 10 years later, same place I was taken to, is that this is where the beam weapons were. And I'll show you how it actually went through this area in the back end. And there was still stuff even this year. People came out of their trucks and they just fell to the ground and they couldn't breathe. They were knocked out, felt like they were burnt inside. The dog and the cat and the woman that I looked after in this area and some other people, when these supposedly floods and fires and direct energy weapons came down, they were bleeding out their rectum. You'll see that their eyes are burnt. They were blistering. They couldn't
Hmm.
see. When you're under direct energy weapon, but this is the actual Silver Creek was actually right in the area where this happened. So
Wow.
again, people always talk about, Maui and this and that and what happened at Jasper by, Edmonton and stuff, but they seem to forget this is happening all over here. This is like
Yeah.
a daily occurrence. We've got something going on in these areas. And
So they're
this is the most
experimenting on you guys, would you say, on the people there?
absolutely, well, this is the takedown so that you get actually, I always say it's like pirates. You also have, they're all inner fighting basically. And so right now, like Summerlin,
Who
Peachland,
is? Who do you, when you say who is fighting?
well, most of these ET groups, on and
Okay.
off, to
Okay.
me, you have non-terrestrial groups, which is fine. I have no problem with ET non-terrestrials. What I have a problem with is illegal aliens. So an alien it means you're here without a treaty. Doesn't mean you have three heads and you come from Mars. It
Okay.
means a lean. What's the lean in the bank? A lean, an alien.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? Sometimes it's the way we say things is, in here. There's a lot of ET activity out in here, like all in the lower Okanagan here,
Hmm.
from Osoyoos to Karasmias. There's actually arrays up in here on the back end I've been to. And they actually say they're beaming to the Pleiadian with the antenna arrays like Area 51. It looks like a miniature harp in a lot of these areas. There are observatories. There's all sorts of stuff going on in here. A lot of people don't know. And of course, the most recent one we just had, I actually got to watch this because as the supposedly fires were coming, a friend of mine was standing here in Kelowna in this area just over the bridge and went up to the top, called me immediately, and I watched. We have pictures of the beam weapons. I have literally seen beam weapons come down myself.
Oh
So
my
when people
gosh.
say these are natural fires, I'm like, get your head out of your ass already.
Were
It's
they
just too
coming from
stupid.
satellites or planes or?
Yeah, you can have planes or satellites. They're up
Okay.
above usually. And usually what they'll do is they will quite often, they don't want you to see it. So you're going to have cloud cover or storm or something sometimes too. But we
Okay.
had it here and then all of a sudden it jumped to lake country. Like, I mean, it's just like people will buy anything. It's stupidity. But
Yeah.
in here, also Vernon and up in this area. So Dr. Richard Allen Miller talks about the Salmon Arm bases and the
Mhm.
Spokane ones. He talks, there's a Navy base here at Vernon. So there's a lot of extracurricular activity people see here. I've got friends all over here. I'm in here all over traveling,
Yeah.
and I cover them like in circles. I've been all the way up to Dawson Creek in
Oh
Saskatoon like
wow.
3, 4 times,
Well,
like with a camper and a truck, right? So
yeah.
that's a lot of territory for me to cover back,
Hmm.
in here and meet with people. But in here, our most recent stuff that I love having in here is something where you hear is the Nelson in here when you get into like the Nelson area. Now, this is when you're talking about, and now we're talking about where's Canada's 51 that I just did a couple shows like with Carrie Cassidy on Project Camelot
Hmm.
and also with Danny Henderson. I love Danny and Carrie. Like for
Yeah.
getting people out, I don't care if people start saying grifters. These are people putting their asses on the line and they're getting information out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have wonderful relationships with them. So what
Yeah.
people have between them is up to them. But Danny's just amazing. She was just putting all her stuff out today when she had her conferences for her Galactic Spiritual Informers Conference, where she's going to have Kathy O'Brien and she's going to have Billy Carson and she's going to have David Icke. So I would love to be at that UK one, let me tell you. But
Yeah.
in here, when you start getting what we were revealing, this is where the Nelson base, where everyone talks about coming in here and you start hearing about every super soldier, James Casbolt, Max Spears, Holly Baggio, that is just actually totally starting to go, says, I'm not going to be talking about certain things anymore. So for someone,
Uh-oh.
she was just coming out in here. So, I've been in here, I've lived with people out here all through these areas, like over the last 10, 15 years. So I've been like going around getting stories and stuff. So I'm quite well aware in here. You've got Tartarian, it's a Tartarian mud flood city in here. You can see downtown, there's things called the Hume Hotel, and you can see
Hmm.
statues which look like big penises and little babies kissing them. And it's
Oh my
just
God.
disgusting when you start getting into,
Hmm.
um, the pedophore kind of stuff that you see. But this
Yeah.
is where basically they are all talking about it. Now, in here, and this is just in the last, I'll just give you 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. I want to talk about your
Okay.
Stargate experience too, so that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we'll come into there. A lot of the stuff too, which was really interesting because once you get up into this area, there is up in Slocan, this is where I was a couple years ago in this area. And this is called the Valhalla provincial thing. And that's what they call the Valley of the Lost Souls, or where the soldiers will meet. They
Oh
always talk about
wow.
at the end days, we'll see you and meet you in Valhalla. So, where are these explosions and where were all the direct energy weapons last year? All in this lake area here. So, basically, all these people were under very close to evacuation and they locked out all these roads here and no one was allowed to go. And then you'll laugh because right at Sandon, and the reason I'm giving you this is all tied in when you know the history.
Hmm.
Sandon is one of the original British Columbia, where they had over 5,000 people here in a city during the silver rush, because this is all gold and silver here. And what happened is got the original second generator done by Tesla 128 years later Tesla himself set up the generators here that come off these waters like Niagara Falls and are still running this up. The government now wants to shut up. That has the power to basically power up everything in this area for these people. And what's really interesting, and in Idaho Peaks, this is one of the highest spots I was ever taken to because you could see clear into the States, like no borders.
Wow.
This is where, the Queen likes to put her little mark or things like that. And these are very, very sacred sites. So in here, right across from New Denver, is where we have what's called basically what you call the Hopi Mine Prophecy Rock. So there are all the rock paintings and petroglyphs here. And what I want to bring to your attention is in World War II, they not only interned all the Japanese here, they interned all the Tartarian original bloodlines, all the Bear Clan, Siberian, Bear Clan, Russians, Ukrainians, Doukhobors were all jailed and interned here and put in prisoner of war camps here.
My
Okay.
God.
I
Yeah.
have lived here. I actually broke my leg and I was in this area. So I know this area very well. So if you can imagine, a lot of people thought, oh, these people, but they interned children here. And you could only see your child for 2 hours once a month if you were good.
Oh
So
my
don't
goodness.
assume these were all just natives because everyone here that had an original bloodline, they went after.
Yeah.
If they were co-opted and hybridized and working for them, they didn't care. But make no mistake about that. And as we get a little bit further, I've got to go explore it because right down in here, there's a cute little thing called Sasquatch Lake up here.
Oh my
So
goodness, it's called that?
it is
Oh,
actually, there you
cool.
go, Sasquatch.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So that's going to be my next little one of these days, it's on the list eventually to get to. But I
Yeah.
wanted you to see that these areas are very, very rich with that. And so you have people like, David Sarita lives down here. I'm out
Hmm.
gallivanting as I go through and I visit, and deal with people out in here. And also, when they set up something positive, they set up something to co-opt people. So, like you have Burning Man and that kind of thing. They have something called Shambhala, and that's where they do a lot of the testing and hybridization. And so people are attracted. They're not always what people think. They want to come down into these areas and party their brains off, not realizing that they're actually being used for, MK Ultra
Yeah.
projects on the wide
Yeah. And
body area network.
the drugs they
Yeah,
take are probably government drugs and they're being experimented
yeah,
on. They did that in the
yeah,
60s a lot. It hasn't
yeah.
stopped.
Yeah, and fentanyl is just like seriously like all over the place. So I want you to, Steve. So this is what we're looking at trajectory. This is not exempt by any stretch of the imagination. And then when you look at why are we here? Because we have access to the spring waters.
Hmm.
We are somewhat protected in this valley. Sometimes you want to be in a safer place where you think you're not going to be hurt. You have to look to some of the tribes in the tribal lore. And that was why I was looking at the rock paintings. And they're all through these areas here. But we know that if you look at the pole shift and whether you call the Zeta talks, it's called the future maps, it's called the Navy maps, and another one was called Gordon Michael Scallions. It's usually known as Michael Scallions maps. You will see where the safer places are, and I can bring them up. But in here, you definitely want to be. So when people start talking to be anywhere in the Kootenays, and you can go back to Lemurian, and when you look at stuff like where Lemuria would be in Mew out here, like, between here and Hawaii, they show that the bug out places were to the Kootenays. It's actually clearly on their maps that this was a safe
Oh,
area, right?
wow. Yeah.
And so that's why I would not want to be anywhere down in here. So you got different places within Idaho, different places even on the East Coast where you are. You want to be away from the coastlines, and the East Coast is just as dangerous as the West Coast. They always talk about the West Coast, but you guys are having just as much stuff out here along the eastern board. And so, again, you don't want to be where things are going on. And we just take a look at what happened into different places of Tennessee and how far you could go in. And they showed you that they could actually level out a town and flood it in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So in here, some of the other things too, is as we get to Tennessee, but once you get into Ohio and stuff like that, and you start looking at what's gone into here in Michigan and a lot of these states, anywhere around the Finger Lakes, these are not safe places because the water can come through and be displaced. And also when you start looking in things like what happened, we had a huge thing like Connors, East Palestine, all those different areas. You've got to look to see where they've been doing operations. So data tox is usually a fairly decent one. But like I said, we're keeping an eye on that because you want to go to where you think it would be a little bit better. And
Hmm.
like I said, for people here, you're either on this side of the Okanagan or not, or there you're going to be on the other side of, Spokane into the Kootenays. And you want to go where springs and waters are. So I always go to findaspring.com. And then, like I said, you can go anywhere on this map and you can see if you're on Google Earth as to how high the elevation is. So it may not seem like a lot, but if I go to Calgary, Calgary's up to 4,000, right?
Yeah.
So don't assume you got to know where this is. The weirdest thing, they were going to actually hide me out and put me for the Klan Mother Enclave bunker was actually going to be here at a place called Elkwater, because this is actually one of the safest places as well that was known to be in the middle of nowhere. And this is where all the water originates. And I wanted to bring this very, very clearly is that little dot here, this is where the water originates and becomes the Mississippi, Missouri, all the way down to your Florida.
Oh,
So the
wow. Oh my
water
goodness.
here at that dot, just outside of here, that's what becomes the Mississippi, Missouri, all the way down. And then up here where I am, up at Revelstoke, see, this is where you got to know your water stuff very, very well. Like when you ask where do you want to be in a pole shift, you want to know where the water works. So in here, this is why it's so important, because up here at Revelstoke, just above in here, is where the water comes in, comes all the way down here and goes through all the way down into the States. So where does the water originate? And that's called the Columbia Water Basin Treaty, right? That's why I was laughed. We had a huge thing. They had an area here just out in a place called Elkwater here. And what they did is they had over 400 just across from the cusp here. But they had a little place here called Edgewood, which they had over 400 and some ostriches. So they put thousands and thousands of injections into them, Biowarfare, and sold that injected meat with all the biotech in it into the local markets here. And so I've been watching that because I've seen where people have been getting sick, and most people are very uneducated as to the biowarfare part of it and how it interfaces with the 5, 6, 7, 8G. That you now have gotten nanosensors and you're being targeted and you're being fried and assimilated. So as you have like a non-human anymore called a Homo hyborg genesis, you will now have basically an ostrich, like a camelus, Stradivarius, basically Borg,
Yeah.
right? So they are doing the Internet of Body as they're doing the Internet of Animals. They are tagging to digitally converge everything and patent it, and then you will no longer have any rights. And that's exactly what they've been doing.
Yeah.
So anyway, wherever you wanted to go back in here, which I
Yeah.
thought was really kind of interesting, but
Yeah.
when you go into some of these sacred sites here, you have to be aware of sort of what's going on here, because a sacred site, wherever they usually put them, is usually co-opted on a ley line or vortex line. And so one of the things, that's why, when I went and I was doing my time, out here, and this is an area now, by the way, you want to talk about infested GMO tick drops? These are the areas. I
Oh
remember
no.
I was going out to my spring waters, never had a problem. I never saw a tick. I was like probably almost 50 by the time I saw a tick, by the way. Didn't know it, read about him, knew about, tick and Lyme and Morgellon and everything else weird, but I'd never seen them. Now these areas are totally been dropped and infested.
Are
And
ticks
most,
natural or are they engineered? All of them. I don't feel like ticks are like created by the creator, are they?
well, a lot of stuff, semi is, but I mean, even you take your food, and I mean, what food hasn't been created? I mean, that's why they said you always were supposed to be eating, the fruits and the berries, anything seed bearing. That was the hint, so
Oh,
not having to put seeds in, but what can self-sustain itself, right? And I just wanted to point out here's when you actually see them playing with satanic architecture, right? So, like I said, people just aren't aware there of what's going on with these medicine wheels. And again, they've been taken over because, right, there's the UN. They've taken over
yeah,
these heritage sites, right? And people
yeah,
just are not aware of what happens here. And so, again, there's very little teachings in here. And again, each one would be red, white, yellow, black. One looked after the north, one looked after the, different directions, but also you would have sky, and land, earth, water, right? All those things. We all had assigned tasks to do. And what they
yeah.
don't show here of the 28th is the 29th sits outside and it's the Clan Mother. She runs all this. That's her territory. And
Yeah.
so, like you would have a teepee, it's the same thing again. They would face their door towards east because they were basically, as you think, the tabernacle, or Christians would think, or in the Torah, or Jewish would think, that was the traveling tabernacle, right? And it was always the female that runs the whole teepee, the tabernacles, the churches. Everything is done to represent the female. If people don't get it, they need to have a lesson. That's why
Yeah.
even the doorways were lowered, so you would come in with reverence to the mothers. So like I said, there's so many different things people have lost over these years, and this gets into that. So I just wanted to bring it to people's attention here, because this stuff is really important, and these areas are under attack. And so supposedly, as you think, stargates are definitely under attack right now. Like, I can just tell you, in the last week, in my area where I was showing you that Valhalla, we've had 2 reports of 2 8-foot blue people walking around, right?
Yes. Yeah. Tell
Sasquatch
it.
this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What's going on with that?
Well, it's a friend of mine that actually saw it. I've
Oh,
actually known him. He's stable. He's intact. I've known
yeah.
him for, like, 15 years, right?
Yeah. And so he said,
I've stayed with them for crap's sakes, years ago in
yeah.
Nelson. But no, that was one of the things they were saying there. But they are attacking, and you can go at any one time. You can see our areas up in these areas are under attack, but we were just getting it like nailed. Right? I want you to
Okay.
go back now. Now take a look at where I just showed you, and now look at these supposedly direct energy lightning strikes. Now we're going to go back a year. What happened a year ago? This is where all the technically direct energy fires were.
Oh,
And there they
yeah.
go again.
And it's
Yeah. And
happening now?
it was yesterday.
Oh,
And
God.
so what happened in there, and this is where it gets kind of funny, is because I had friends out in the bush there, and they called me up. They said, we heard these incredible cracking, like it sounded like their houses are shaking, there's sonic booms happening, they're hearing the hums. People are actually seeing, like I said, it's not that far out here. It's in the Valhalla Park up here where you're seeing it, just south of this lake here. And that's where actually the 2 blue beans were seen. And then as I get back into the lower corners, I'll talk about Todd Standing, who also is someone that's been documenting very well Yeti,
Yeah.
Sasquatch, and
Yeah.
Bigfoot sightings. So,
Yeah. Are
but
these blue
yeah,
beings attack? Are the blue beings the one that's are doing these fires and these direct energy weapons, or is
I
it
I kind of doubt it. I think they're
okay?
just
Yeah.
hanging out, checking
They're
out
just hanging
going for
out.
a
Maybe
walk.
they're doing damage control. They're trying to.
Well,
Yeah.
who's blue? I doubt it's the Blue Chicken people, and I doubt it's Project Bluebeam for just 2 guys I know, but
Yeah. Yeah.
middle of the backyard of their,
Yeah.
acreage, right?
Do you think
By
they're
the
getting ready to do a false alien thing? Do you think
Well,
they're
it
getting
doesn't
ready
have
to
to
do
be
that?
false. They're already
Okay.
here. How can
Yeah.
it be a false thing, right? I mean, how they're
Well,
going to present it and what they're going to try and scare people with
that's what
is
I
a
mean.
different matter. But
Yeah.
we've had contact forever. You can go to the
Hmm.
ARB Dante Russian book. And I mean, I've known about that for like decades.
Yeah.
And I mean, I studied every race I could. I actually, in my Genius Biofeedback, put something because people tell me they're being abducted. So is it are you talking about, you're meeting with the emirs? Are you talking about this council? Are you talking about Pleiadians? Because most Pleiadians are known as well to be kind of trafficking, and people, if they're Tagatans or Dakota, they keep themselves very clear that we're not part of those Pleiadians. We might be in the same area, but, or a
Yeah.
bear clan or something like that. So what the blue beans were, I don't know. They just said they looked about 8 feet. They did
Okay.
not look like a Yeti, a book. They said they were blue lights. They emanated all blue energy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
Okay.
so they weren't threatening. They didn't feel threatened. But when they ran out there with headlights, they disappeared. But they said they were in an area you couldn't walk because in one of these areas, I showed you how the train is, right? So they
Yeah.
were living right at the edge of basically the creek, and it
Hmm.
was a very thick kind of island. And they
Yeah.
said you couldn't get there like too well
Yeah.
during the day, let alone at night. So, and then
Interesting.
I've had other friends in those areas all of a sudden reporting we've had like kind of white powder come down a couple of days. We've had now white foam things coming up on the water systems. We've had reports of thousands of like white 1 inch to 3-4 inch like albino alien Morgellon like fiber worms that
Oh,
they've been
wow.
trying to kill with salt. So you just, it's like
Yeah.
in New York, right, where you've had cities where people all of a sudden are sitting there and notice that they've got chicks and they thought it was raindrops coming down or little hail or sleet, and then realized they were being rained with ticks. And now we've got all these people that have got, the same in infections and the co-infections and all those things are getting debilitated. Because, I mean, what does it cost for them to put ticks as opposed to trying to get people in here? And now, because you can put it in through the nose through spray or on a Q-tip or whatever, people don't realize that they're actually being tagged and bagged, and that this is the same thing that was in the injections. And now they have one that just goes through the skin like a spray.
Mm.
So almost, and they've been doing, like, there's graphene in tattoos. I've been warning people for decades about what was in the tattoo paints and what it does. I've got girls that are so sick, debilitated, literally, if they're not taking enough cannabis or something to knock
Yeah.
out the pain, or CBD or THC, or on the street drugs, it's because of the pain. And a lot of the paint, I actually have had clients come in, instead of menstruating, they're menstruating out the colors of their tattoos
Oh
right
my
now.
goodness. Oh
So I've
geez.
had to do a lot of yoni steams and vaginal pearls and getting people educated and say, please stop doing tattoos.
Oh
Please
my
stop
goodness.
doing piercings. You are going into acupuncture points. They're putting graphene here, or they're doing stuff all over. Those are over vital organs, vital chakras, and vital acupuncture points.
I didn't think
So,
about
for
that.
example, someone gave me one of those, patches. Hi, let's try a patch. We're on a multi-level. You're going to get rid of pain. So I put a patch right over the pericardium. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, I had a heart attack.
Oh my God.
And so my other client had a stroke, and which was a couple blocks away, because they can start activating people, areas, cities, and everything is being frequency triggered. And how I usually teach this is that if this is what you think is your injection, right? I'll just use my Tesla kind of thing here for one,
Yeah.
but here you can see the metal. That would be like your graphene, heavy metals, and all the content. So there's all this stuff. So we might be able to get a little bit of this down, but there's no way we're going to be able to reverse a lot of this nanotech and biosensor. So Sabrina Wallace is 110% correct. So is Tony Patoresco. So is Zish. So is the power, the pulse of Zach. We're all telling you the same thing. Quit taking the M blue, quit taking the nano silvers, the nano zeolites, certain carbon C60s. All those things are very
Are
nano
these
level.
supplements you're talking about?
They're not really supplements.
Okay.
People think they are because they're being given by the health people,
Right.
but these
Yeah.
are actually substances that are synthetics. They're pharmaceutical.
Okay.
So is the horse paste. I don't care where you get it from. I've
Yeah.
seen it under the microscope. What happens is when that goes in, it's like what we can do is hit another beam weapon, and then this can start exploding anywhere.
Oh my goodness.
And
Okay.
that's why when people, I want you to see, when you go in here, they can remote control and move this. So this can fragment, and then this can start creating as you said, this certain little virus that rhymes with Santa.
Oh yeah, the Hanta, which
Yeah,
means
those things.
in Hebrew means scam, correct? People are coming out finding out that it means scam or false. Yeah.
Again, so we get into this, so is Santa, but that's okay. But
Yeah.
the point, yeah, it's another
Yeah.
analogy. We could be at, with the chimney and everything else. Anyway,
Yeah.
but in here, this is what's going on. And so you're carrying that. So now with all the excess, let's say, radiation coming out of here from the satellite, you now have got a tether line to the satellites up here and towers. And
Oh
so what's
yeah. Okay.
happening is they're exciting these people, activating them, and then they start actually radiating out. And
Okay.
that's why when you get near someone, a lot of us then get acute wave radiation illness, right?
Mm.
So we get headaches, our skin turns things, we start wanting to vomit. And a lot of us as women, we start bleeding.
Yeah. Now,
So,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
yeah.
finish because I want to bring up the data centers because they tie into all this. I mean, they're not doing this for so you can store more pictures. This all ties into everything you're talking about, the future system they're trying to create where they surveil everyone, track everyone. And I think it's really important for people to know the water that's being used in these data centers is destroyed. I mean, I'm sure you know it's like irrevocable. They're destroying the water
Yeah,
with these
and
data
absolutely.
centers.
Yeah, you're going to
Yeah.
be very, very careful. It has literally, as I showed you, how the land, we've gone from like green lush, right, to being this terrible thing here. And what's happening is it's destroying the actual land. And where you're wanting to put in these data centers or whatever, and I mean, some of them, I'll just bring this up. This is actually off my Facebook group. That's what's, if I want information, I go to my pages on Facebook for the most part on here. But what happens here is that you're seeing like different things. It's massive. And what it's going to do, it's going to take all your, just like you have highways and everything else, you've got waters, rivers and everything else. They're absolutely destroying it. The water is coming out brown, black. And I don't know if you've ever seen tar sands, but this is exactly what's happening in these areas. People are getting extremely sick, and it's going through like millions, like 5 million gallons of what the water is to start cooling it, because a lot of them have got the copper and stuff like this. So a lot of people are not very aware of what's going on. And even when you take a look at here, this is where you start getting cyber wars. Basically it's like beam weapons as well. And so they can start targeting in on areas. And we see this all the time. If you ever see the cyber technology wars and that sort of thing going on, they're using this and then the weather warfare to start activating people. It is so bizarre.
It's
But the
nefarious, so
AI is
nefarious.
really, yeah, it needs to literally be stopped in here, because
Yep.
once you start looking at what this starts activating, I mean, it's insane. Like I watch everything because, a lot of people, and again, I find this is the problem, is that people are so isolated. They can't think beyond their conception of a freaking border, which just blows me. But in here, for example, there's another cyber war going on, and we'll see through radar. Not only that, but we can actually watch the radar happening on your areas. And so
Okay,
they
now
are
what was that
doing,
we just saw? Just so the audience is clear with all those different lights coming up. What was that you just showed us?
those are cyber wars, what you're doing. They're using direct energy weapons and using things like Wi-Fi and different things along that line. These areas are getting activated, they're burnt, and you can't, all you know is you start feeling unhealthy, you start feeling like headachy, you can't explain it. A lot of people start feeling anxiety. So when you start getting into what's called acute radiation illness, this is actually what's happening.
From the
And then
data
what's
centers or like the towers, the 5G, 6G towers, or
all the
both?
above, these are all tying in together. And then I'm
Okay.
going to bring one more thing into there, which is what you guys are getting now, is called the corneal mass ejections, the CMEs. And the corneal mass ejections are also coming off like solar flares. And if they're facing, you're now seeing that this is affecting everyone. We are getting literally fried in here. So this is where I start teaching a lot of what is going on here. Right. And so
Hmm.
you are feeling this form of radiation, and they're talking, it's going to be corneal mass ejection. And what they're doing is they're hoping to take out people by blood type. They're looking for blood lines. It's not just like there's 60 of us, which there are, 4 positive and about 50 some that are, Rh negative. They're going for people that have knowledge. They're going for the oldest female on all these different bloodlines, because it's the oldest female to the oldest female that hold genetics. And so once you start getting into the data centers, and then again, you can look, and I don't know if you have looked that closely, but you start looking at the data centers and where they want to put them, just like you have deep underground military bases here. And I'm just bringing a quick one up here.
Hmm.
And you got to remember, most people have seen, I think, these maps, but they're not putting the correlation there. You've got 100 and like close to 70 some in the States. You probably have at least just about that amount in what you think over the border. And so these are territories that are run by the different groups, so as above, so below. And that's what a lot of people are missing. They just don't connect their dots.
Hmm.
And so the data centers right now are in there to connect. And it's not about getting faster internet, or we're doing this with Amazon or whatever. Is that this is so dangerous, because this is wiping out life as you know it.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
wiping out the water. You will have no drinking water. And they've already been doing it up here. And maybe not as clear as what I think people on the other side of the border think, but we're all here as part of what was called, not Turtle Island, by the way, it was called the Americus Empire. Yes, it kind
Okay.
of looks like a turtle, but it was actually called the Americus Empire. And so a
Yeah.
lot of people like that just are missing real simple basics here, and that's why we came in with the kind of technology, and why I came and started teaching people, right? I started talking about, hey, let's go back to the plants. We got to preserve the water to keep
Right.
the plant healthy. And yes, I can use the tech and all these fun things in like kind of, high frequency wands, or if people have the violet ray Tesla wands, but using the tuning forks, using the plant medicine. But I can take any plant here and convert it into a sound.
Yeah.
And that the body will recognize in there. Now, like I said, I just did a whole thing about the Hopi prophecy, and I just did this thing with Danny Henderson on her show. Because if you're
Hmm.
not aware of that, Danny just put some amazing stuff out today. And when we started talking about the, kind of Canada Stargate and Area 51 and all that kind of fun stuff here,
Yeah.
what I wanted to do is bring you into what was going on because a lot of people are hearing this and they don't realize that we want to bring back some of these old medicines like the Tesla kind of violet rays and these sort of things. So my medicine of using biofeedback is not old. You can actually see clearly they had computers and tuning and frequency generators before the pyramids. So I'm
Yeah.
working with the original, and the area where I am here is called the Siniac territory. When I'm visiting the Siniacs, they have a matriarch. They have
Hmm.
their local queen,
Yeah.
and right, her name is Marilyn James. But what happens is, again, like I said, a lot of people have been on prescriptions. They've mutated their genes, which will affect their memory, their cognition, but also affect the genetics to pass down. And what unfortunately we saw, like in these areas, like many areas, is many of the younger women went for the injections in the last thing, and they all now have stage 3, 4, whatever, or they're dead. And so there was no one to carry on that teaching.
Yeah.
And it's either got to be the oldest female, or if she can't do it, then the youngest female.
Yeah.
So
My
there are
gosh.
things like that. Yeah, it's all, again, it's like a data dump. So I don't have the same genetics that my younger sisters would have at all.
Hmm.
And so it's a data dump. They kind of get a bit of a carbon copy. We all kind of look like that. They have fragments of it, but they don't have the original genetics, and that's only passed down once.
Yeah. Yeah.
So very,
Thank
very
you so
important.
much. Yeah. So I mean, we're getting down to time here. Would you mind just telling us your experience with the Stargate? Because I know we mentioned that before, and I'm sure some people are like, "Wait, what do you mean you went to a Stargate?"
Okay. So in there, which is really cool. Okay.
Well, will you
So once
explain what a
upon
Stargate is first, and then
okay. Well, we'll say basically, what you're looking at here. So when you look at these, supposedly there is a Stargate, and of course, Trump's now calling his, so there's a Stargate thing he's got, right? So that's a whole other thing.
Project
And
Stargate,
yeah, so
which
start thinking about what that is. But your Stargates and stuff like that are known to be basically, we'll say, and I would say, look at actually, the movie. If you haven't seen it, then go watch that. And my favorite thing to go back and forth and every once in a while, I like to do that because they went, I saw that. Okay.
I've never
Is
seen that movie. I'll
SG1.
have to watch it.
Oh, yeah, watch Stargate one just so you get the idea of it, the,
Oh, okay.
SG1, but there's a bunch of them. There's a whole slew of them, but there's the original one in here. And I liked the original one here. Um, Amazing in here with James
Oh,
Spader and yeah, Goldie Hawn's other husband in here.
oh yeah.
Anyway, you look at the real like Stargate in here. So what happens is that basically these are said to be your portals to other dimensions, and that they are gateways that you could go. You're basically spending, well, basically folding time and space in them. And then what's happening in here is that the Stargate allows you to teleport. So just like, in Star Trek, where you had beam me up, Scotty, this is basically the beam room. And so a lot of these Stargates are, said to be run by military and in conjunction with some of the ETs. So you have different gates, and then you have apparently illegal gates. Okay. So they're not all supposed to be. So a lot of these gates or military bases, like Nelson is known to be an Orion, a Gray, a Pleiadian, right? And then you got some military, and then you
Yeah.
got other nefarious things in there. So you don't know who's running stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how I could best describe this to you and show you. When I was at Project Incension, and maybe that's just the best ways to take you there, is it when I did Project Incension, we did one of the things in here, and I think when you sort of see what I'm trying to show you, there's not
Yeah.
just one set of basis. Okay, so there, if you wanted to, like, I talked to her a little, but if you want to see great stuff, look at Todd standing
Oh
here, right? Your
yeah.
Bigfoot and stuff. Okay, so Todd standing is not that far. He's in the lower Okanagan. That's where he took David Avocado Wolf to do it. So, like I said, I've got lots of people that have seen him, heard him, filmed him, whatever. I've gotten
Yeah.
a
Well,
walking stick
you've
from
got
one.
footprints. We if you have time. I don't know if you're how you're feeling doing on time, but you also have pictures of footprints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do that now, actually, before you. Now that you're
Yeah.
reminding me, maybe I should do that now before we get to combobulate it down the other rabbit hole. Okay, so when I was actually a couple of years ago, I was down near the border on that area, and it's just right on the American border. But here you can see it's a lake. It was called Edwards Lake. Okay, so it's really kind of cool. And this half would be, as you think, the Canadian. We don't recognize him, but this half is Canadian. That would be the American side where the border is at. Okay.
Yeah.
And what happens in here at Edwards Lake, this is what you always thought. It's called the Tobacco Cree Nations. And this is all lush, and you get there and it looks like Area 51, like just desert. And like, what they do, bomb this at one point? Like, I was just like, yeah, that's why there's a border crossing there. But anyway, what happened is I was in there also measuring EMF, radiation, gamma, that kind of thing, because you can see that they're always going to be higher in these areas where they're targeting. And so I'm off there, I'm on like a little camping expedition. And
Oh my
might be a little
goodness.
bit hard to see, but there's the footprints right there. So the day before I came, it had rained, and there
Oh,
were
I
fresh
see it.
prints
Yeah.
that were just absolutely huge there.
Yeah, and you said what they were, how many inches? Like, I think you
Well,
said.
these ones are pretty big. I don't remember. We didn't have a tape measure up there. I'd say
Yeah.
they're probably at least 15 inches in there.
Wow.
Now, having said that, when I talked about, there was a friend of mine, Rob Nicholson, he wrote a bunch of books, and those books were like still, in a sense, about the children and different trafficking and stuff like that in these areas. But Rob had actually been out to these areas by Hope and stuff like that. And he actually got molds, and his molds of the footprints were basically about 19 inches. And he used to
Wow.
have a set called basically BC Prospectors, which I think has been done, but it was talked about the ETs, the aliens, the gold mines, and he had a whole thing called Sasquatch Legends at one point, because these were the guys that were in contact with them,
Oh
right?
my
But this is
goodness.
the yeah, I knew it was so
That's
cool.
so
I just like
cool.
I was right there. So and one of my friends said, I'm sure it's female, and a lot of the people around here. There's another friend of mine. She said that they're in contact with it as well. But yeah, like you can see, like once you get in there, you can see fairly
Yeah.
large compared to the what the
Yeah.
cords are, the cut wood. So that's
Yes.
where it was. And then you could tell here, most people will know when we do vision quests and stuff like that, but you can see that was not too far by
Yeah.
the springs and stuff down the road in there. So you know that the tribes are in there, and we're usually wherever you have tribes, you have like lots of ET extracurricular, because they've been abducting them for years trying to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I thought you might kind of enjoy that. So I
That was
actually
really
have
cool.
I've had my own experience out there, right? And they actually left a bunch of rocks, and they were piling up rocks. So you could go to bed and then get up, and you could tell someone had been out there manipulating things. And this is not something an animal would do, or a bear, right? Or anything like that. It was very deliberate.
Yeah.
And I think I told you, like, my favorite story was really when I was out at Wanascawan there, and I was at one of the Cree days, and there was a guy from the Carrier Nation, and I laughed. I said, "Oh, I've been to the Carrier Nation. That's where I had all the other weird stuff happen with protecting the sacred Lula." And he
Yeah.
started talking like they won't talk to if they don't know you. I mean, and this is the way it is. You guys are hostiles. You're enemies to the tribes and the clans and the nations until you prove you're who you are, a friend,
Yeah.
right? Because you can have shapeshifters, you can have body hoppers, you can have possessions. In a case, anyone with injections, right? They've been possessed in a way, and they can start mutating. And because you've got all the surveillance equipment, right? These people are walking surveillance details, whether they realize it or not. But he was out there camping, and I guess not that I do it, but he was eating a muskrat, and so
Oh
he was
yeah.
barbecuing the muskrat, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, so what? And I went, other than I'm grossed out being a vegetarian myself, but okay. And he said, yeah, all of a sudden it was out there, and he said the cabin, the roof line came at about 8 foot pitch, right? And he said this thing was just basically to the roof pitch. So he said this Sasquatch Yeti Bigfoot was about 8 feet, and it went over to the fire pit and the barbecue, and it took off the muskrat, and took it
Yeah.
off the stick, and it ate it, and it put down the stick very, very nicely, and was
Yeah.
very, was very clean and very tidy.
Yeah.
And they
I
kind
love
of
that
looked at him
story.
and then left, right? He says, like, what do you
Yeah.
do?
It's like, okay, well, guess I'm ordering in.
Yeah,
What do you
exactly. Or, yeah.
what do you think they are? And then we'll hop
Oh,
back to the start.
definitely. Yeah, back we get into the, interdimensionals and stuff like that. So
So you
part
think
of
they're
this,
interdimensional? Yeah.
there's interdimensional and, multidimensional and extra, there's all that stuff, right? All these different people, like I said, everyone's got a kick at the cat, but a lot of these different things, like, when you look at the Stargates, like, what is it? There are people that go through that what's called the Time Travelers program, right? Or as you think, Time Walker Society is what we call it. So I hold all the Meredith Quinn, they're not necessarily all of them, but a lot of the Meredith Quinn teachings. When you start learning about all the clans, all the tribes, all of us have 1,500 pages. Like there, I just opened up exactly to what you need because it's the time
Ooh.
walkers, time travel.
Oh my
Okay, not bad.
goodness.
I did 1,500 pages. I just did the right page. But it
We're
says
meant to be
time.
talking about it.
Yeah, time is being seen by the American Indian, the Dakota Time Walkers, by Mr. Meredith. Well, it's be Meredith Quinn, the Eagle Clan and the Bear Clan, and what a god is. So you got to kind of get through here, but all the stuff to do with your pole shift, all the missing history, all the Tartarian stuff is in here. This is like beyond the Bible, and all that talks about the times of Atlantis and the time walkers that went through here and how they were doing, Illuminati prayers and what you call direct energy weapons to basically dumb down the people, which you would call 5 and 6G right now. But when you start getting into the Stargate part of it, like what really is this? So this is where it said basically it was guarded and they were ancient, mythological. They're not myths because I've been to one on here. And so they are again dialing basically trajectories as to how to get out of here. And so I think once you see the movie, you'll appreciate what I'm trying to show you then.
Yeah.
So
So they go to
my
other dimensions or other planets or
yeah, yeah. I'm
okay.
apparently if you go to ACIO, I'm actually if you go to ACIO, I'm actually they say that I'm part of the time travel program. Clan mothers usually come in at the end of a epoch or an end of like, from one period to the other, like whether you want to call it like the Kali Yuga or you would say from the age of Pisces to Aquarius, there's a time thing, and we're brought in to kind of elevate, educate, and make sure some of this information isn't lost.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, guidance and stuff like that,
Well, we're in it,
and
right? I mean, we're here now, right, Karen? I mean, it's happening. We're crossing over into
yeah,
that. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So I really think if you take a look at, whatever. I've ever since I saw James Spader, I'll watch James Spader just about anything
I'm gonna
now.
watch this tonight now. I'm gonna watch
I
it.
really think, and the other one will be Jupiter Ascending.
Oh,
There's
I love
the
that movie.
Matrix, but Jupiter Ascending is about the Clan Mother coming to the planet, having the bloodline, and having that genetic to be a holder, right? So
Yeah.
they used to call the Clan Mothers actually in the Bible, we were called the angels, the queens of the
Oh,
heaven.
I
And
love
so the
that. Yeah.
angelic, we have the angles. The
Mm,
angelics are angles or Anglo-Saxon, however we did our things with the
yeah.
Cleopatra needle. But
Yeah.
in here, this is the Stargate. So basically, the quick story. I was taken by a bunch of people. I've been protecting my children in here from these Illuminati, including my ex that was a lawyer. Okay, they were
Yeah.
part of these various trafficking organizations and rings and tongs and mafia and whatever you want to call them.
You didn't know
So,
that for a while, though, just so everybody knows. You
oh,
were not involved. You found it. You were blindsided. Yes.
I was like, right, right. That's why they came after me when I started putting things together. Like, took me a few years, but whatever. But in here, once you start getting it, you get it. Like you can't go back, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I was protecting the children. I was on the way through to pick up my vehicle, right? And a lot of stuff in here. We were taken for hours into that. I'll just say Hope or that Okanagan area. And I went in, and I remember we were like in this van, and there was a whole bunch of people, and I got to sit in the passenger seat, and there was, one of the guys there behind the wheel. And I was really bored. And it was like a tight safari, like you were going through these little ruts in the middle of the mountains, right? And so
Uh-huh.
I was bored. So I actually rolled down the window, right? And I put my hand out and I grabbed the leaves and the branches. I was kind of bored, right? Like, so I play with the leaves as they're coming through the window. And as soon as I did that, he slammed the thing in the park. And I'm like, and literally a break. And I went, what? He goes, well, we're here. And I went, I was just like, kind of went freaky. I went, like, what? I'm not supposed to touch anything out here or what? But on the other side, when we got out and we walked through the forest, and there was this clearing, And similar to the one more so maybe on the right, there were like trees and petrified woods and things like that. And there were carvings, and all the carvings that you see within the Stargate and the SG1 were actually there. And I was like, and I'd been reading, I really hadn't even watched any of these movies. I really was never into Star Trek. I mean, this kind of stuff. But anyway, so I'm
Yeah.
sitting there. That's why I said, like, James Spader will talk about how he was decoding the ancient languages, the glyphs, because they were in some of the stuff that we see today in Greek, Coptic Greek, and then there's Chamatic languages that actually Sir, Wallace Budge was like knighted for because they're secret languages. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, and I do, because that will come back to our treaty that's on the obelisk, Queen Cleopatra, but the Clan Mother's treaties are in New York in Central Park. There's some in Mexico and New Mexico. So we have them here, like medicine wheels and, my little glyphs here on the lake and things like that. They're all markers, right? When you know what they are, right? People think, oh, it's just a piece of like Egyptian art at its old stuff. I went, you have no clue. Like when I've held like copper plates that are like 20 pounds each, that is the actual like Moses coming down with the plates. Now I know what he was doing. He was coming down with the law. And you know who Moses was to be? Moses was said to be the great Musa. He was the lawyer or the clan chieftain for the Klan Mother at the time. That's why
Oh,
I have
wow.
Moses is in the great Musa. They talk about the great Musa. So I have those that the Bible got screwed up with, that they
Oh my
rewrote and did
goodness.
whatever they wanted. So the original ones were taken and stolen from this continent over there. But anyway, so back to our thing. So we're in the trees, and I'm like getting all excited, and I'm looking at all these things. I went, oh my God, this is amazing. Right? I've seen these symbols before, not having like watched the movie. But one
Yeah.
of the first things that you'll see if I ever had a marker that worked great, but when you have a
Oh
marker
no.
that works great, what will happen? I have one. No. You have the symbol that looks like this,
Hmm.
and that is known to be the Stargate. You also see it in the crop circles and different things. There's been a new crop circle too. So I watched the crop circles because those are like things to do with DNA and alignments and
Yeah. Can you read
genes
them?
and stuff.
I would assume you could
Some of
probably
them,
read a
yeah.
lot of. You
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, I've kind of been self-teaching a bit too. And
Hmm.
so anyway, so this was really kind of cool. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is it. And so there was all these like, hieroglyphics on it. And I'm sitting there like, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I should have been an archaeologic. What's ark? Ark means bear, by the
Oh
way.
my
So when you get to bear is what you call Ark, Covenant of the Ark, or Arcturians, or if you put a
God.
T there, Tartarian.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God.
So also is from Urs or Ursuline bloodline, the
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
also brown, anything like that. There are codes that we will have in there that all mean back to Octarian. And so once you get your little pull star up in here and you get something that looks like the bear in the constellation, that's your Octarian constellation. And that's why they say everything is constellation. And so when you say it's easier to get to heaven, but through the camel's eye, well, they mean camel's arc. Or as I told you, our peace treaty is the camel's Octurian that goes back to it was called 408 AD. It's a peace treaty. And that's where all the tribes beat the Roman Empire. We defeated the Roman Empire, the monarchy, the deep state, call them whatever you want. And we forged out a treaty, and the Dakota Empire came over to Mexico, and they put it in what you call similar, like to that little weird Aztec Mayan calendar disc that's in Mexico. That is the signing of the treaty. And so most people have no clue what these are,
Hmm.
but to us, they're sacred. And so when I held those like copper plates that you see that went down, it was amazing. So when I went to the Stargate and I'm looking at this and I'm going, yeah, okay, this makes sense. And I said, it's because you're male, you can't read it. And quite serious.
Yeah.
Our brains work differently. But when
Yes.
we were taught original thing, we went from right to left, not they had to train us to go left to right, right? And we went
Hmm.
up and down. We worked in different things. So even when I hold a map, everyone goes like north, like they keep north to there, and I'd be confused. So I navigate the way I'm going, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how I looked at the map. And I said, it's because you're not reading it properly. You're looking at it, trying to get out. You're trying to look like this. And I said, you got the wrong perspective. We came in this way. We were star seated and came through the soul, or what you think the sun or the soul gate. So he was quite impressed. He says, I said, look at this and look at this. And I said, well, there it is. It's a map. What's the problem? I
Yeah.
mean, to me, it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
It's
Did you
the
feel
map
you'd
on.
been there before? Or
Well,
you're,
yeah, obviously,
yeah.
that was like more than deja vu.
Yeah.
Like I've had time travel. I just time traveled about 2 months ago with a friend of mine. I take one of the seniors out to the local hot springs, right? It's our like get in, I say get in the village, right? But anyway,
Yeah.
um, so we went up there and I went from basically like one town to the next town, which should take 45 minutes at
Mhm.
least, plus drop them off. And so I went to the tire place to get my tires and they go, what are you doing here early? And I went, what do you mean? And basically no time had passed. So I was like, what do you mean I got here? I just left. I mean, I couldn't have, how could I have gone between two
Yeah.
towns or like two cities, right? It doesn't happen. Well, it
Yeah.
does, but if you're time traveling. And then I went to go pick up my friend that was a senior, dropped him at the restaurant. And he said he had gone there. I got dropped off, went to order his burger or whatever, sat down, got it delivered. So that's 10, 15 minutes to make your order right. Sit down. He's eating, looking at the clock, and realized we're still in like the other town, right? Can we
Yeah.
bilocate time travel, however that works? So that does happen. And so
Yeah.
that's part of it. So one of the things that was very interesting, and I don't know if you know what ACIO is. Have you heard of that? I mentioned it a little
No.
bit last time, but probably glanced it over. ACIO is what we call the Advanced, or some people say Alien Contact Intelligence Organization. This
Okay.
is like, to me, the planet's Men in Black. These are
Oh,
run by people
cool.
that were former NATO, very high, as you think, beyond super soldiers. Okay, so they have a whole thing on here. You can look at their stuff, and you'll hear probably references. Jessica Morocco is amazing. She runs it, and she is kind of like the PR person, but she does stuff as well. But it's run by someone from the 12th Division Commander, and it's basically where Pine Gap is. So if you know Area 51 and Sector 4, Nelson, whatever base we have up here, blah, blah, blah. In Australia, it's called Pine Gap. And so that's where a lot of the cloning and where the super soldiers, and again, massive, like even Gene Decoder and all those guys, I'll talk about that one. But basically, they monitor, that's why I call them like my friends that are kind of like the Men in Black. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's like watching like all those guys, Will Smith and stuff, but they monitor the ET, the extraterrestrials, the secret things, and they're trying to keep some balance on this planet, so to speak. But he's been in there, and yeah, it's quite the organization. So I actually just did a show with them, and we spent like part of the day together, and all I'll tell you is that basically most of it was redacted, but they put about an
Oh,
hour out of it. And so if you go to Jessica Morocco
no. Hmm.
on her Andrea talks there, um, you go back about probably 4 or 5 months ago, and they released it about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months later. But in here, if we go back a little bit, oh, wait, there we are. I just saw me. We'll go back in here. There's a bright blue one here, right there. And
Oh,
so I actually
cool.
got to speak with them. And so the short version
Yeah.
is they're bringing out disclosure.
Welcome to disclosure.
And so what you're going to see here is myself, Peter, and some other people were talking in here. And basically what happened is they have said that I've been part of the time travel. I am part of that. He also
Hmm.
says you're not a Canadian, you are an actual sovereign. So you're going to see all the different things that we're connected to. And
Hmm.
that's why you said, are they familiar? They're not familiar. It's like, I know. I know
Yeah.
stuff that's been going on in here. And so what happened, these are the different units in here. And I've been dealing with a lot of these people for 10, 15 years, right? And he's got the security clearance that these are literally like you can, NATO soldiers and stuff like that and divisions. So once
Hmm.
they start teaching you about what are the actual, who's really running these governments aren't running things. This is the stuff beyond the Illuminati and the all this and that. They're not running this stuff. 13 families and the Black nobility families, they're not running this stuff. These guys are all way, way, really far down. And so
So
the
who
the
is?
short version is this is some of the people that tell you who are. And
Ah,
so these are the ones where you got to know these old things go back 13,000 years, 5,000 years. Like monarch is not the crown, it's a corporation that goes back 6,000 years. And so what actually Peter started going into, and like they rarely do anyone. I know there's only been a few of us, a handful that they've ever put out. I was just blessed to get one of them. And I just wanted to talk to him, right? And we recorded it, but like I said, a lot of the stuff is we can't put, who they are, list whatever it was. But one of the things that came in here that was really kind of neat, which I thought was very cool, was that he told me all my relatives, like who my parents were back to 1924, when I came in, when I came out, what I did, operations that I was part of. It's always been child rescue, protecting children. I was in Dachau helping people. I was involved with even the Cuban thing from Florida. And it's weird because he would mention things and I go, you know what? I went to Florida. I went for a biofeedback conference because I'd been helping so much. So we went down to Florida and I stayed where actually the tribes were for a while before we went on our Caribbean cruise, and right just outside of Cuba, right? Where they've got Gitmo Bay, but it was in the other part of the Caribbean, which is all connected anyway. But in here, I sat there and went, the one time that I've been somewhere or something like that, because I've never really been to that much of the States, right? Parts of them. But, when they start talking, this is who your parent is. You were part of IBIS, you are part of Umbrella, you are part of Project Mannequin, all these different things. He goes, this is what you did. And then actually one of the funniest things he said to me, which of course I was laughed about the Canadian thing. I said, yeah, Canadians don't even know it's 12 miles outside in the ocean. They don't even know what the hell it is. So why bother starting? But anyway, he started laughing, right? And so I spoke to him. He speaks like 10 languages, totally multilinguistic. I spoke to him in Cyrillic Russian. He replied back. I spoke in French. He spoke back. He's got Asian. He's got English. And English is his worst, whatever. That's not his mother tongue.
yeah.
But one of the most incredible things I think he said to me during the interview was that he kept referring to Robert. And he goes, oh my gosh, Robert actually like called one of his children after you. Because Karen, that's why he's Karen Ann, because they deliberately put this Karen thing. If you hear Karen, you're almost like, oh, she's an idiot or she's crazy, because they put these things out as psyops,
Yeah, the whole
right?
Karen meme. Yeah.
What does Karen mean? It's a derivative of Catherine, and it actually means pure and full of grace. So that's what
Yeah.
Karen actually translates to, is purity and
Yes.
pure and full. That's why they could go,
Yeah.
you're great, Karen, actually.
Yeah. Very
Right?
unlike all these memes they're putting out about Karens and yeah, which
Yeah.
is it's perverting it.
Well, so when they bring someone up, they've already got it planted in your head. And they started doing chips with actually my initials that they were using
Oh
for
my
actually
gosh.
tracking chips and stuff way back when at Project Incension. But when he came to me and he said, Bobby, this and that. And then Jessica goes like this. And she goes, you're talking about Bobby Kennedy. He says, I can't say anything.
Oh my
And
goodness.
we went back and we traced, and sure enough, so he would give us enough information. You go back, and then Chavera and all those guys, and it was assassinated by the CIA, whatever, on that, what we were doing, how it came to be, and I was blown. And they're not that they're past lives, because we're here on missions, right?
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
being reincarnated. We're sent through the time travel thing, through the galactic stuff. And so what happened, it was interesting. Every version of Karen, it was Cariana, Macdonald something or what, everything was a derivative. He was reading off the files. So it's like reading your Akashic records,
Oh
right?
wow.
So a lot of
Yeah.
people, when they're throwing tarot cards and stuff, I went, please. Like, you know,
Yeah.
um, this is the clearance and stuff like that. You've got to have certain clearances to do things. So I thought, wow, this was like totally fascinating. So those are, some of the things that I thought were, I think, the most validated,
Hmm.
and I could sit here forever. I did. I was crying at some points. He would say something, and even in my mother's tongue, and there's parts of me that still, it's a heart language. It's a light language. It's a
Yeah.
mother. That's my original mother code. So when they speak to you in that language, you get to know that. Now,
Hmm.
I'm just going to sort of finish a little bit off here on here.
Yeah.
Is that many years ago, or I don't have to finish off, but for today, I did some really weird stuff. Okay. This is my weird woo woo stuff. Anyway, back then Andrew Mallett was amazing. He still is, right?
Hmm.
And he wanted to get into this, journey and stuff. And we were all about truth. That's what it was, sovereignty and truth. And so he went and he started way back when in 2016. And I just met with Sergeant Massard and a bunch of people to do with the radiation and what happened at Fukushima. We knew that this was going to be the end of, things as we know it, because things are getting mutated. But he approached me 10 years ago, as you can see, on the
There
secrets
you
of
are.
healing. Yes, that's when I was out just south of Ottawa in Kemptville. As you see, I move around. And we had one. So it was 1, 2, 3, and you go, where's 4? Because 4 was one of the best things I've ever seen to this day on colon hydrotherapy. I taught it from an esoteric, intellectual point of view that you would like use this crystal and this carnelian for the second chakra. And this is what we're doing and what we do with the oils and how we can put all the different, wonderful healing elixirs go directly in, and boom, you could just about fix almost any disease rather than trying to put things through. And it's like going through the stars. Am I trying to go this way or you want to go back up? You have to go this way to ascend and incend, actually. But
Yeah.
anyway, out of all the things that they ever took down, they took down last year my number 4 because they started talking about baking soda and colonics and how to heal and reverse diseases. That was more important than to all the ET aliens shit. They didn't care about that.
Oh
Pardon
my
my French,
goodness.
en français. But in here, we worked with Sergeant Daniel Brad McBullough. It was U.S. Air Force, unacknowledged projects, Project Diocese and all that has a like sort of like that long credentials. Actually was taken out, cloned it, contact in the desert, then they have to go find them. We did one in here. I really want to get into this. This is all about genetics. This is about the RH, ET, alien factors, how many different, like 50 some blood types, how they started breeding. This was actually the basis to Randy Kramer, by the way, teaching at Yelm and teaching about super soldiers. And when you had Lieutenant Colonel Randy Kramer come out and start teaching that he'd been to Mars for 17 years, this is where some of the actual, you'll see some of the same footage that we were allowed to disclose. These were actually how I knew what was coming with the injections. And I'm talking, I was trained in 2004. So almost another 10 years. You got to remember, it's almost 20 some years ago I was trained in about what was coming with the injections and the venoms and stuff like that in biotech. So in here, this is where they are forwarding and changing your code and they're inserting foreign material. This actually in here will show you where they're actually assembling clones. And it actually says the genome is an assembly of another human. This is like your cloning. It's
Oh my
called
God.
Project Panther.
There was like a
So
movie about that a few years ago, like Peel or something did a movie, and it's like everybody had a clone underground. I forget what it's called, but you're just
yeah,
popped in my head. But everybody had a clone, and it was like
there's
an evil clone,
yeah.
like underground.
Yeah, they have like the island and parts and sorts and stuff like that. And even
Yeah.
adrenochrome, they were using it for synthetics. In here about the triple spiral, this is when you start getting into how they're playing with the DNA. Hybridization mixing, which was very cool. That's a Pleiadian group that came down. A lot of this stuff is you start hearing about the giants, the ETs, groups that were actually kept. And they've always made a fake. So once you get one of the original ones, you'll see the other ones. You talked about this Stargates. Here are some of those positions that you'll see them in. And I love this is my favorite picture, even though it's warp drive. It actually explains how they're doing the cities here. And because in those cities, that is how they are going to basically the 15-minute cities. Everything
Okay.
I could have talked to you about a little bit,
Hmm.
there's your pyramids. Then now you can see how we look at the map a little differently.
Yes. Yes.
You
And
know,
how are
so
they
these
doing
are,
the 50-minute cities you were saying? Wait, what are you?
well, they're called 15-minute cognitive cities, C40 cities, stuff like that. But that's where they literally are locking people down. You
Yeah.
won't be able to go farther than what it is. And they're already functioning in many areas, right? We've had them
Hmm.
even where, and again, with what's coming, we're going to see further lockdowns. And a lot of it also has to do with pull shifts. But in here, if I can just bring that up, it's such a
Yeah.
great picture.
I have
My
a quick
favorite.
question. That picture reminded me, hybridization cloning. Are we seeing this in some of these Hollywood actors? Or some of these Hollywood actors
Yeah.
hybrids and clones? And
Yeah, absolutely.
is that why they're impossibly good looking? Some of them, and you're just like, there's no way. That's not
Yeah,
true.
yeah. They're not there. And who cares if they take one out or not, or,
Yeah.
take one out on stage or not, or have it,
Hmm.
it's your head, who cares? But anyway, and I don't get into a lot of it. I follow it because people ask, but not that I want to, because I think it's a distraction. In here, I
Yes.
want to see how they can work. And I use this. Let's say you were living in a city, or same thing, how they come underneath with a dumb, because they can go right underneath and you just have a topography of it. Like you're just not looking at it properly. When they start putting these towers around the cities and stuff, you are being microwaved. Okay. And that's how they can lock down a city. That's how they lock down people's minds right now. It's
Hmm.
very easy once you get into seeing how it does. These are all the extra blood types. They never told you, and some of these they've taken off the internet. You can't even find them anymore. We're lucky we had pictures here from the blood book and stuff like that. These are things I always laugh. I said, there's a 51 here. I said, oh, yeah, that's the one that was made in Area 51. Right. And then there's
Yeah.
stuff here like people RZ, all sorts of stuff. Like, and
What's
they
that
store
mean?
them
What does that mean?
just
RZRZ.
just just designations they have for mitochondrial and for genetic coding and stuff. So some of the things that are in here though is that how many people have ever seen it? It tells you here Native American Alaskan thing, RZRZ, Caucasian, KP, whatever. Most people have never heard of these ethnic groups by blood type
Yeah. I
because they've
haven't.
got a further designation, right? And this is what they're playing on. This is what they're taking out. This is what they're looking for to see who's got stuff they can play with, and when you start seeing how they can start blurring things, like I said, they've got stuff built underneath this is kind of like a Stonehenge or something, but it doesn't matter. They can have electrical magnetics like this, like I showed you that the medicine wheel I was at. Some of us are energy sensitive, and most what they've tried to do is deactivate it, but some of them aren't fully deactivated yet. Okay, this is the stuff also to do with what I was showing you, the medicine wheel and the Stargate and stuff. It's done on constellation and it's heavy duty stuff. So until you've had some of the basic teachings, you won't get it,
Hmm.
and this is like, we're talking about subterranean, like subterranean and Arcturian and mapping systems. And that Sergeant Broussard was really great at explaining some of the stuff. Like, I don't have to agree with 100%. I think some stuff was disinfo, but for the most part, a lot of it was brilliant. So in there, we had the genetic thing, and as quickly as we, went by through all the rest of them, you know, we haven't done anything for years because we found, and were they taken out? Are they not acting the same? We're getting disinformation. And at some point, you just say enough is enough. I've assimilated as much as I can. These here, I was actually on the reserve at Atakakoop, where I showed you, north of Saskatoon in the Cree area. And we actually had people that were being abducted there. And I actually talked to people that were abducted. I saw the areas, there were UFOs. I actually saw two ships fighting myself one night.
My gosh.
That's where they had cattle mutilation. So if you ever want to have something, that's where you go. Like that
Who's
was,
who's abducting? Is it my lab or is it extraterrestrials or is it both?
it's both. I mean, most of them are
And
in there, but
why? Why are they taking
they're
people?
all, because they're all fighting over people. This is a genetic farm. This whole
Okay.
thing is they're raising people like you raise chicken, right?
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why I don't eat chicken and beef and animals, right? It's by
Yeah.
frequency too, once you learn stuff. Anyway, a lot of the stuff, like I had my own shows, like Radio One Pyramid shows, like stuff like that, everything, decolonizing stuff here, what was coming in. But in here, this is what I think a lot of the stuff when you talked about the stargates and stuff will go into that, and the looking glass. This is where we did some really, I think, fairly decent, cool stuff that's more kind of in the woo-woo area. But these were, and again, these are not your NASA satellites. These are military satellites we were looking at. Okay.
Mhm.
They were not the things that they like to deceive you. That's why everyone's Stefan Byrne and Gina, everyone's going off NASA data, which I just went, it's probably wrong, or it's 10 times whatever, or it's 3 years out of date, whatever.
Yeah.
But these were actually clusters of actually ships, ET ships
Oh, cool. Oh,
outside
wow.
our galaxy.
The blue,
With
I mean the green.
greens.
The
Yeah,
green.
there was 397 of them at one point. And so what we were doing, we were looking at the Lasco and the Soho and stuff like that. And you would look at what we were looking at. And then if you looked at the public one, it would never be the same. Never was the same. And so they deceive people. And that's why you just can't go by a lot of this stuff, because everything basically being put out in the public sector is a lie. So even when you start getting into what are they doing, how does the system move, what is the disclosure, like I said, you just can't. I mean, there's no faith into what was going in here. But when you start seeing about different things that are being dug up, the whole Tartarian thing, the ET, the giants that were, 8 foot, 12 foot, 20 some feet. I always laugh. I said, there's a picture in here of one of the original genetics, and you'll have pictures of Queen Elizabeth and on tour and in the Smithsonian and where are these things cut of, the Egyptians. But you got to remember that occurred basically here. How our DNA was, people that it killed when you start teaching about genetics and triple strands and the other, things even like Ashiana Dean teaches about it, the voyagers and stuff, and getting into the genetics that people just don't know how they're playing. This is why they're doing the soji. This is why they're transgendering all our children. This is why the people are just about nuts in every one of the different things here. Like I said, this is stuff that people would have killed for this kind of information back then. And it's still here. ET alien stuff. You talked about cloning, taking the genes and making varieties of them, and you can see them and see them and see them.
Yeah, there's some actors. I'm like, I forget. I'm like, wait, that's not the same person. I thought they look so alike, and I'm like, all right, what's going on here?
Yeah, this is Sergeant Daniel Brad McBullen, and then when he came back, he actually had over the weekend he grew his beard, 2 inches, and he had great hair, and we went, and we used to call it the Dan, not Dan. I know, but it's somewhere in here, but they realized that again, when the guys, you go to these things and people are being cloned and taken out. There was the Dan. Oops, there he was. My Dan, not so Dan. And literally, these aren't him. You can tell the different things as we're going through them. So they used to take, pictures. This is actually stuff that, we were told that we're like taking out Amundsen Scott, South Pole, Antarctica, right? Years ago, out by a race called the Lang, right? Then again, we've had these in Saskatchewan too. I remember people calling me. We found out we've had triangular landing pads in the middle of nowhere, right? So all this stuff actually was when I really kind of got into like down that rabbit hole. But the most important thing to me is we started getting into the genetics. And this is where we got into who the clan mothers are, what are the genes, how are they erasing, and they're going after all the females. That's what they really are. They want all the females taken out that are holding these lineages or any kind of knowledge, kind of like the witch hunts and inquisitions,
Yeah.
right? It's stopped. And then they time traveled every religion, not just the Christian one, but every time they did one, it was a period or an epoch, and you can actually trace it that we came from the stars, we're supposed to leave through the stars. So as we kind of go through this mess, where are we going? But the most important thing is how the genetics came in. And this is actually original contracts with the clan mothers, and the other would have been Queen Elizabeth or the Fae Queen. All this stuff in here has to do with our genetics and who we are and our bloodlines. So you're darn right, they know exactly who we are, where we're going, who we came from, who we are connected to, and who's got signatory sovereign authority. And just because it's an actor on the stage doesn't mean that that individual has any authority to do anything. The only difference is they have big armies and we don't. But that's actually like a contract, like instead of a flag, that's how your flags and coat of arms were done, because those were agreements back into the 1600s. Okay, so there's the bear and the boar and all that. So it's actually in there when you look. And this is a star disk, and this is actually ties in. I want to show you this because you asked me about what was the Stargate around, and there's part of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when you actually look at some of this does that mean anything to you, or just look like Chris?
No, it looks like it's got some kind of writing on it. It looks like it's
Yeah.
worn away, but
Yeah. So those are actually when they did even treaties or discs. So when they came in, you have to know where the stars were aligned here and where they were there. It's just not what Santo Bonacci talks about, the sine wave and the Taurid and, Aries in the constellation, right? And of course, you're not working on 12, you're working on 13. But in here, you take a look at that. That was actually an agreement between the Tudor or the Draco reptilian groups and the clan mothers. And that has a very beginning and it has an end. And so it started in 340 BCE, and then it ended up, how did that happen? Oh, that's our thing here.
so is it ending now?
Yeah, it ended actually in about 2013 or so, not 2012, 2013. And so those are the things that we basically are looking at in here. So as you start looking at some of what's going on here, this is very, very important information. And so I
Yeah.
think those white meat in here, we talked about underwater bases. We talked about everyone's South Pole, Antarctica. I was watching things melt like 10 years ago. Now I'm like, yeah, okay. Back then, I mean, when you go down a rabbit hole for a while, the other thing too is you talked about stargates and looking glass. Actually, Sergeant Brassard is probably the only one I've ever heard. And this is why I still will refer to some of this information that we did, is
Hmm.
that this was actually what the Gulf War was about. Otherwise Iraq and Iran right now, Aryans.
What was
So
it
all
about?
this is all about the stargates and the fights and what's underneath these areas. So they had actually stargates, and that's what actually special forces, not everyone, but only special forces were in, and they were to dismantle these different stargates and looking glass technology and time travel stuff. And they were sitting and they were dismantled under there. So this is what they're still doing. They're
Yeah.
still going in, they're still under wars, they're still moving things. And like I said, you really can't see a lot of stuff when you don't realize, and this is why I said in our Valhalla Mountains, you look at a mountain here, and I've got friends that have been in the bloody maglevs in the trains all over the world. I actually know people that have done that, you know.
Gone in trains that are underground. Uh,
Absolutely. These are all the different, they're called maglevs. So these are actually how the trains or the transits or they go between city to city or dum to dum.
yeah.
These are patents. You can actually check all this. This has to do with CERN and the synchrotron, all the crap that's going on, because actually CERN and all that stuff blew up. So we were
Oh.
involved in all this. This is what I'm saying. People have a little bit of knowledge, and I mean, I know nothing, but the more I get into
I wouldn't
things,
say that, Karen. I think you know quite a
but
bit. My God.
compared to some of the people in their areas of expertise, that's why I went to some of these people. I learned certain things. These were things that were drawn up. That's when somebody says, "Oh, there's radiation." I said, "Well, which kind?" And I'm like, or someone writes the thing. You see in the thing I was showing them, I said, "Guess what? There's a book called The 13 Original Clan Mothers out there." But like, and they threw some tarot cards and like how to do TP things too. But they talk about it. No, it's getting to be on your inner self, right? I'm going, they've always got to mutilate something, right? And
Yeah.
so this is why I said you can go back and take a look at this. I'd take it with a grain of salt.
Hmm.
Like I said, there's so many stuff, but like, back in 2016, we had, I was bitten by one of these stupid little things. So I was telling them, I said, I got bit by one of these little remote weird things. They collect your
Yeah.
DNA and they give you stuff. And when I did my scanning, like the Genius, that's the old version of it, but the old version of the Genius that I did on the scale. And here it came up, I was positive for Malaysian pit viper and reduced snake venom.
Oh my God. So they're
So
injecting people with snake venom,
oh, you want to
among
talk
other
to me?
things.
I said, hey, I'll give you all the different remedies for that. I was telling the people about this. Like I said, this tobacco thing and knowing stuff, you got to know the circuitry of the avatar of your meat suit. People call the body, whatever. But in here, all those points have got a frequency. Whether I go and scan them with my biofeedback, they bounce back. If you're blocked, you got a tumor, fibroid cyst, or you got a parasite nest there, we'll find it. And
Yeah.
more important, this is how this stuff goes through here, right? So this is the old days. And that's why I'm saying people, just amazing what I'm coming to. So these are very cool. You can't see it, but you can feel it. This is the silent, invisible war. This is what they're doing in the cities and in all the cars after 2005, right?
Oh yeah.
That's why I don't live there anymore. It just about kills me to go in there. But once you're growing up in this and you don't know any different, this is what's happening to people.
Yeah.
And so this is where it gets like really, really kind of dangerous, right? And
Yeah.
so, like I said, people have got to do, get their seeds. I was
Yeah.
teaching people about doing underground, but doing seeds, sprouting, vertical gardening, because you only need a little bit of water. You won't be able to grow in the ground. You're going to have to take it down, even a greenhouse, like down 2, 3, 4 feet, right? A wallapini is what it's called. How to do Kratsky, how to do different things here, biodynamics. Again, the very things that people are missing, and to get your essential oils are probably the most important thing right now. All
Hmm.
the essential oils as your medicines and stuff. So that's more where I want to get into and, get the healing out. So I've had
Yeah.
my share of boo boo. Like I said,
Yeah.
this is just like, unfortunately, normal life. But until they clean it, and I just listened to a very cool thing just in party. I was listening to Rod Hayes. His was invited to a channel I put on my Facebook group, but it was to do with basically the King Charles. I said, there is no King Charles. Don't even worry about it. It's not a Klan Mother. It's like he's got no one he's talking for. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, it's all smoke, mirror, theaters, distraction, right? People are like, oh, what are we doing? What's the QAnon doing? What's the White House doing? What's this doing? It doesn't matter. It's, are you ready? Are you prepared? Are you going to be listening in natural law? Kind of like, is your oil lamp full? You better have your oil lamp full, or you better have your sprout seeds, and you better be, where do I need to go? And if you're not there, then you need to be ready to go there within less than 2-3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was, in there actually at Wanasque, when I was with someone in CSIS and someone from the Canadian military, and they said, don't worry, by the time we're done, you'll be in like a teepee and you'll be hot in winter and you could live out of 3 Rubbermaids. And you know what? They're right. It's, what does it come down to? What is important? And I think that's what we need to do. We need to get back to nature. You have to be mobile. Things flux. Every area I've been in, there's been something happen. That's why I'm fluidly moving. I'm mobile. At any one time, I still have 3 or 4 Rubbermaids, and within half an hour, even Dr. Miller called me.
Mm-hmm.
We're on a certain alert. You have to be ready, just in
Right
case.
now?
Mm-hmm. We're
Okay.
all on alert. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to be ready to go within half an hour anywhere.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
So
so
that's
maybe
just
RV living is the way to go.
I think there's a lot to be said to it. Like, like I
Yeah.
said, I wouldn't be like on Vancouver Island right now and hanging out in Baja or someplace, but there are some commonplace and better areas to be. And that we've got a whole beautiful continent here to explore, or worldwide where you are to explore. But, you need to get things into perspective, and you only have to go, like Shulman Wave is over 100 right now. I mean, my clients are brain fog. I can't remember. People in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah. I couldn't
And
remember. You asked me what to do this week, and I'm like, oh my God, what did I do this weekend?
and it's so important. And I'm actually great, but I'm watching, I mean, it doesn't matter. And I'm watching the animals get it too. Like, I've got to do a dog on Vancouver Island next, but that's the same thing too. You put down what you need to do, right? Because people are just, what's the point of doing it when you can't remember? And
Yeah.
I think that becomes the issue. And right now, all I've said to people is be with the ones that you love and love the ones that you're with, because that's the most important thing, right? I have stuff here in case something happened to children. I still have clothes for each one. We could just carry on.
Yeah.
Really, like in these areas, a lot of them where people are, they're here for a reason, because they're tied to nature. And that's what nature's law is, we have to be ready. It's not just because I was a leprechaun and I had a brownie hat. It's about just being prepared. There's nothing wrong. It's not fear porn to get prepared. People carry a spare in their car all the time and a tire jack in case something happens. It's not any different than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the whole idea about conspiracy, which I laughed, I said, I want to be the biggest conspiracy there is, because it's con against the pirates. I said, I really don't like piracy.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
And I said, what? There are people that are not here that are very benevolent, and that's the way it is. And Chief Pontiac was talking. He said July 4th, and they don't usually give up dates. They said July 4th, they're probably going to come out with, again, the Federal Reserve has gone down. We're going to be looking at the new currencies being start being revealed. And he says, and just wait for probably a year or two till we can get the Klan Mothers and the matriarchs of the territories setting up the currencies and the bank replacements, so they can take their trust funds back and help their people in a couple of years. That's
good
actually what
things are
we're looking for.
coming. I mean, you're ultimately
Oh, God, yeah.
positive about the future. Enthusiasm.
You know what? They've been spraying stuff over my head since I was a child, right? But like I said, you're moving a lot of things. I grew up in a allopathic system. My mom never told me about a naturopathic doctor. I mean, my father went to a chiropractor, but that was it. But I was a nurse, right? And I learned from her psychiatric nursing books from the 50s. That should scare anyone. What they were doing was torturing people in these asylums, and still do to this day, through the government and the medicalese, the legalese, and the pharmacalese, and the whatever it is, their witchcraft stuff. And so then to swing back to what my great-great-grandmother was doing, right? we had 2, 3 generations in here where they really got discombobulated, but you need to go back to like 4 or 5 generations and know who the roots are, what the blood type are, what your coat of arms are on your mother's side, and each one of our mothers had a tribal star galactic peace treaty. And mine just happens to be the Noah's Ark, Camel's Eye, Cleopatra thing. You got the wampum belts, you got your Solomon seal, you got whatever. But, like I said, and Pleiadian of Troy, whatever. It's funny that now that I look at them and they said, oh, it's the Paladin. I went, oh, you mean Pleiadian? And then they would go, oh, it's the Ark. And I went, oh, you mean the Arcturian? Like the other, something, Arcturian. So you can see where they played with the words or how it got translated improperly, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of blanks to fill in.
Yeah, you do. And you know
they've
what?
created.
I think it's great because you know what? People here, the reason it's gotten this way is because people don't know. When my great-great-grandparents and my babas and I used to go out gardening, they were seed saving. So we would have been doing heirloom or therapeutic seeds if you were like doing essential oils. And then they had some that, I remember kind of, Mackenzie's had an organic, but the rest of it was all garbage and GMO. But by the time my mom started doing stuff, and I just know because I was at the nursery, I'm going, oh, my mom planted this. I'm going to go get some portulacas or I'm going to go get some wave petunias because she had it. Because it was Mother's Day yesterday. And so I sat there and I was like, right? Did my mom ever have a thing? Did she teach us about all the importance of therapeutic, organic and stuff like, and organic's like level 2. So talk to me about therapeutic or heirloom seeds and I get it. Right. But now it's incumbent upon me not only, and I'm only responsible for teaching my children and my lineages. So I'm not responsible for the whole planet. Everyone's got their own lineages they've got to track through.
Yep.
So, but I think that's the important thing is that it's carried on,
Absolutely.
Dispense that information. That's what we're here for. It's basically knowledge keepers, wisdom keepers, and record keepers at some level for our things. So, my thing is to make sure I know how to do pasanka and really like raw borscht rather than cook borscht now, or can I do it with a Vitamix and up the game a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Making raw petahen, Lucyk or something like that. But that's about keeping your original customs, usages, and laws.
Yeah,
and I
excellent.
think that's the most important because that's who we are, and I think especially as women, one of the greatest ones too I was just talking to is actually it's called the good darkness, is the women are learning how to redirect their menstrual times, fluids and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably blew a lot of women's thing to learn that maybe they weren't supposed to be menstruating, just like men weren't supposed to be losing semen, right?
Yeah.
When you wanted to build the Incension and everything else, the matriarchals, Maureen Walton's got some amazing stuff. That's
awesome.
what we call parthenogenetics. So just kind of wanted to leave it on that, and we've come to the full circle.
We have. Karen, thank you so, so much. I appreciate you coming on
You're
again
welcome.
and teaching us and talking about your experiences. Fascinating stuff. And thank you. And I'm sure you'll be back on again at some point. But thank you.
Take care.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.